Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Saturday, March 19th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The spring game is in exactly 4 weeks, 28 days. The game against Michigan in 252 days. We're going to go a little out of order today. Notre Dame, 168 days. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're not worried about football today. We're here to talk a little Ohio State basketball. The Ohio State men's basketball team will live to fight another day. The Buckeyes, they haven't exactly been known for outstanding defense this season, but they held Loyola to less than 27% from the field in a 54-41 opening round win on Friday. Kevin Noon joins me from PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh. He was there for the game against the Ramblers. Kevin, it was not exactly a thing of beauty, but this is the time of the year when you have to just survive in advance, and that's exactly what the Buckeyes did on Friday.
Yeah, we throw the term rock fight around a lot in talking about sports, but this one truly was a rock fight. I mean, you're looking at a game where it was 23-18 Ohio State at the half. I mean, neither team was particularly sharp offensively. I mean, was some of that a result of the defense that was being played? Was some of it just a matter of maybe the enormity of the situation? You sit there, you see guys that you're used to seeing going for 20, 25 points in a game. Lucas Williamson for Loyola, Chicago only having, 5 points in the game. He was 1 of 10 from the field. Hell, he was 1 of 6 from the free throw line. Ohio State did what it needed to do. It was able to come up with the win. Certainly not a game that you're going to put on your resume reel in terms of being this dynamic game, but a 1-point win, a 13-point win, putting up 50 points, putting up 10 points, whatever it takes, just win in advance, and that's truly what it is.
When we talked about the Buckeyes opening, where the Buckeyes were going to be playing and who they were going to be playing, I will be the first to hold up my hand and say, yes, I did not think that you were going to be sticking around for Sunday. That just where the way this team ended the season, the matchup with Loyola, it didn't seem like it was shaping up to be a great game. The Buckeyes entered the tournament with a defensive efficiency ranking of 131st in the nation. That was the worst of any of the teams seeded 9th or better in the whole tournament. And you mentioned Loyola didn't look great at times. They had, they were 3 for 10 from the free throw line or something like that. And, your free throw defense is not something that you really can carry game to game very much. But, Loyola had shot clock violations. Like, there was legitimate defense from the Buckeyes. Where did that come from? What was the difference on Friday that this team looked like a different team than it did in previous games?
2 words, Kyle Young. I really think that Kyle Young being out there just makes this a very different team. And while, I've got the final book here and I don't necessarily even know numbers off the top of my head. I mean, he had 9 points, but, he had a plus minus of 13 in the game in terms of what he was able to do. He was out there diving around. He was able to do a lot of things for the Buckeyes that they hadn't had. So, and that's not taking anything away from Joey Brunk, who stepped up in the interim to get him to this point. But I think that having Kyle Young, having his leadership. I mean, we talk so much about what his output is in terms of offense, what his output is in terms of defense. I think having that settling force of Kyle Young, somebody who's done this before, somebody who just really has a magnetism about him, I think that really helped Ohio State in a game that, honestly, I don't know if anybody truly felt good about it, even with Ohio State being up a dozen down the stretch until the clock read 0-0-0.
Yeah, and not only getting Young back, they also got Zed Key back. Both of those guys were considered game time decisions, and that was another one of the big reasons I was not feeling particularly optimistic that they were going to get past Loyola. And then not only Young, you went through Young stats, but Young and Key together, 47 minutes together, 11 points, 14 rebounds. This is not an incredibly big team, even if they have the whole roster. And you haven't had Justice Suing, you haven't had Seth Towns all year, not having Young, not having Key down the stretch. Like, this team looked lost without those two guys. Getting Key back as well. I mean, he was not as big a factor as Young was, but getting Zed Key back, that was another thing that probably made a pretty big difference.
Yeah, this wasn't a game that was really built for Zed Key. I mean, yes, Ohio State was the bigger team. You would have thought that there would have been some opportunities. They tried to do several runouts for him. Didn't work so well there. I mean, he looked like somebody who hadn't seen a lot of minutes here recently. He's going to have to turn around and get that solved before Sunday in a game against Villanova, but certainly having him out there as well. I think so much of this, though, is going to be Kyle Young, and that's not taking anything away from Zed Key, a guy who still has a couple years left in terms of his career. but I just can't say enough about what Kyle Young was able to do. I mean, I think you sit there and you circle a couple of guys. I think that there was a stretch where Malachi Branham scored like 8 of 10 points for Ohio State when points were very rare. So he had his involvement. I mean, this is always going to be E.J. Liddell's team. He did his things, but what Kyle Young was able to do certainly helped move the needle and made this a very different team. I mean, Ohio State held Loyola to 41 points. Ohio State against Michigan, senior day, Value City Arena gave up 45 points to Michigan in the second half. So just a tale of two fates right there of what went on. Just I didn't expect to see a game that was going to hit the over, certainly, for those people out there that are degenerate gamblers. But, I certainly didn't think we were going to see a game that was only going to have 95 total points.
Yeah, if you had told me before the game, here's all I'm going to tell you. Ohio State's going to score 54 points, and they're going to go 1 for 15 from 3. I don't know that I would have given them a 1% chance to win that game. And then not only do they win, the game was really never particularly close in the second half. Ohio State got it out to like a 9-point lead, like a minute and a half into the second half, and it never got smaller than 8. They had an 8-point lead to stretched out to a 14-point lead at one point, 15-point lead at one point. It just, I guess the good news on the offensive side of the ball is, number one, survive and advance, but number two, 1 for 15 from 3, like they can't possibly be that bad again on Sunday. So, if the defense can carry over and the offense can perk up a little bit, now you're maybe talking about a team that could give Villanova a little bit of a run.
Yeah, I mean, give Loyola Chicago a lot of credit. I mean, with the doubles, they were doing a lot of things where Ohio State was having a hard time adjusting. I mean, they certainly were recognizing that they were getting doubled, but yes, the 1 of 15 from 3 was just unbelievable. I mean, they went a long time. It wasn't like they hit like their third one and then had futility there. I mean, I marked down, I don't remember off the top of my head when it happened, when Michi Johnson hit his 3, but I mean, it was huge in a game where there weren't huge runs. Loyola's biggest run was 6. Ohio State's biggest run was 8. Ohio State's a team that has lived by the run, that has died by the run. There weren't those huge swings there. Ohio State always seemed to have an answer. Loyola might go for 2 or 4 points, and then Ohio State would somehow figure something out. And that was so important. And yes, we talked about it earlier, 3 of 10 from the line for Loyola. And that is just a killer. Especially when you're leaving just those hidden points out there in terms of 1-on-1s, it was very difficult. And Ohio State had to do a lot of things too. Let's not forget Malachi Branham picked up a 4th foul with about 6 minutes left to go in the game. They had to take him off for a little bit. Offense didn't flow as smoothly, if we could even say it flowed smoothly at 1 minute of this game, but it didn't look the same with Malachi Branham off there. But it was just a huge, again, this is not a game to hang up in the Louvre, but this is going to be a game that you're going to sit there and look back at, and hopefully this is going to be a bit of a turning point. And that's not saying anything of what's going to happen against Villanova on Sunday, but hopefully this is a game that kind of shows to be a little bit of a turning point of what this Ohio State program can be.
I would imagine you got to talk to Chris Holtmann and some of the Buckeyes after the game. I would imagine that relief was probably the first emotion or first thing that they expressed. But what was the most interesting thing you heard from either Chris Holtmann or one of the players after the game?
To a man, they were all about the tougher team sets the rules, and Ohio State proved to be the tougher team. And Loyola Chicago came out and played a very physical game. They came out and they were up in Ohio State's face. I mean, they were not going to sit there and be this little finesse mid-major type of team coming out there. Loyola Chicago looked like a Big Ten football team out there, but Ohio State proved to be the tougher team. Ohio State was able to set the rules. We talk about these tenets of, all these teams have these pillars that they go by, and that's certainly one that Ohio State goes by. But during Ohio State's little 4 or 5 game losing streak that they went through, they certainly were not the tougher team. So seeing them being able to come out and be the tougher team on Friday was a big deal.
All right, we've mentioned a couple times Villanova is the next team up. They crushed Delaware 80-60. That one was the drama was all drained out of that one pretty early. Is there anything that sort of stands out to you about that matchup from the Ohio State perspective? That's a team that presents a very different type of challenge than Loyola did.
Yeah, Ohio State beat Villanova badly a couple years ago. Colin Gillespie talked about that during their post-game press conference. Got some sound up later on Friday over on social media and on the Ask the Insiders board. They certainly are aware of what Ohio State's program's about. It's not going to be the same team in 2022 that they saw in 2019. Villanova has these bigger guards that are. It's going to be a team that's got many more weapons. It's going. I mean, this is a huge step up in terms of competition. Ohio State, for one reason or another, was able to keep Lucas Williamson in check. It's not going to be an instance of going against Villanova where they're going to really be able to focus on one guy and say, well, we can take him out of his game a little bit. Even if our game's not there, Ohio State's going to have to come out, bring the toughness, but I think Ohio State certainly is going to have to make a lot more shots.
Yeah, almost unquestionably. I don't think you're going to hold Villanova to 41. So yeah, that'll be a little higher scoring. Before I let you go, I think everyone has obviously watched the tournament on TV over the years, but I don't think a ton of people have actually gone and seen an NCAA tournament game in person. Just let people know a little bit about what the atmosphere is like in there. I mean, you've got all these different fan bases. Some of them, like half the crowd doesn't care about the game that they're watching and is just sort of impartial. It's kind of a different and very unique kind of way to watch a game. So let people know a little bit about what it's like to watch an NCAA tournament game from courtside.
Yeah, well, on Friday there were 4 games in Pittsburgh. There was a morning session with the 2 games. There's an evening session with 2 games. They clear the arena, so you could buy a whole pass for all the games, but you're clearing the arena. So you're going to have Ohio State, you were going to have Loyola Chicago, you were going to have Delaware, and you were going to have Villanova fans. Ohio State, being Ohio State, wasn't going to get any love from anybody that wasn't there already scarlet and gray clad. So there was a lot of pop there for Loyola Chicago for what they were going to be able to do. There certainly were the sections for Loyola Chicago wearing their Harry Potter scarves or whatever is going on there. But I don't think anybody from Villanova was necessarily cheering for Ohio State either, because they'd like to clear the seed line. But then again, I think some people may have thought that Loyola Chicago may have been the better team. So it's great because at best, it's kind of a neutral type of situation. At worst, you're kind of the bad guy. You're kind of the villain. R.I.P. Scott Hall, the great WWE wrestler, in terms of talking about the bad guy. But yeah, I mean, it's a great experience. I highly recommend anybody who is a big basketball fan and gets the opportunity, go to an NC2A tournament event. It's a lot of fun. You meet people from all over. It's just not necessarily the same crew that follows from game to game to game to game. And as for my personal experience, I started off on the floor. I didn't have an assigned seat. 60 seconds before the game starts, person who had my seat came in, told me to hit the bricks, so I was up in the hockey press box. So my nosebleed finally just stopped.
Yeah, and my favorite part of covering an NCAA tournament game in person, only NCAA approved cups on the on press row. Yes, there's big signs warning you can't take your can of drink out there. You have to pour it into an official NCAA cup. So yes, the magic of the NCAA tournament. Huzzah! It is here again, and you will get to cover another game on Sunday as the Buckeyes take on Villanova. So make sure you follow Kevin on Twitter. What are you, at Kevin A. Noon? Is that right?
No, I'm Kevin_Noon on Twitter.
Kevin _ Noon. You can fill in the blank there. So Kevin _Noon on Twitter. He will have all sorts of stuff on social media and interview clips, I'm sure, and coverage of the game at BuckeyesScoop.com. So, and he'll have coverage leading up to Sunday's game, and then of course after Sunday's game as well. We'll try and make the logistics work to have him on after the game on Sunday if that all works out as well. So should be a lot of fun stuff to talk about. So thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.